Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to ROG Pulse, the weekly show where we dive into all things tech and gaming. Today, we're getting our hands on with AMD's latest and most powerful gaming CPU. There it is, the Ryzen 7950
The wrong way. That was so
X3D.
lame.
I know you had one job
I had one job.
and you flubbed it.
Yes, I know I did. I'm sorry. Yes, we've got the 7950 X3D in-house today. I am excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Oh,
super
man.
cool to see what this is all about and what it can do.
That's right. We're going to show you what this chip is all about, how you can kind of make the most of it, and we're going to check out gaming performance a little bit too. I'm blown away. Spoiler alert, I'm blown away.
You've been testing for like less than 24 hours, right? Or just about 24 hours?
Yeah, this was a pretty quick turnaround because we got the CPU. I had to get this PC back from Eric. So those of you who may remember a couple months ago when Ryzen 7000 series first came out, we built this PC live on stream. You can go back into our archives on Twitch and check that out.
Mhm.
And yeah, I did a CPU swap. And then just started testing as much as I could. And yeah, it's a pretty awesome CPU. And you know what? Switching over was pretty seamless. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Should we start just by talking a little bit about what this chip is?
Sure.
So I've got a little slide here, guys. If you have not been paying attention, AMD's new Ryzen 7000 X3D chips are out. Starting today, you can buy the 7950 X3D, that's a Ryzen 9, or the Ryzen 9 7900 X3D. The Ryzen 7 7800 X3D is coming soon, but not available yet. They'll be available at $699, $599, and $449, respectively. The chip that we have today is the Mac Daddy here, the big boy. The 7950 X3D has 16 cores, 32 threads, and can boost up to 5.7 gigahertz or a 4.2 gigahertz on all the cores. Now, what makes this chip special is that unlike traditional CPUs, which have a more limited amount of cache for the CPU, which is like really, really, really fast memory on the chip that the CPU can access, this baby has 128 megabytes of L3 cache. That is twice the amount of cache on the normal 7950X. That is really useful in certain tasks where it's kind of randomly accessing data, like games, which makes this an absolute monster of a gaming CPU. We saw this with the 5800 X3D last generation. What's special about the 7950 X3D, besides the fact that it's just faster all around, the 7950 X3D has more cores. And so the way that it's split up is that you have this, I'm going to use my mouse here as my fancy laser pointer. You have this IO die here. That's like the boss that does all the delegation. And then you have two chiplets. This has been a feature of Ryzen since they came out, separating the cores into these little like mini dies. On the 5800 X3D and on the upcoming 7800 X3D, you just have the one chiplet with the 3D V cache, and everything is going to run on those cores. Because the 7950 X3D has so many cores, 16 cores, it's actually split across two different chiplets. So one of these chiplets, or CCXs or CCDs, has the V cache on it, and it's clocked down a little bit compared to the 7950X because it has that V cache. And this chiplet, the other one, has no 3D V cache, but it has a higher frequency. That makes this really special because not only is it going to run games like gangbusters crazy good, but it is going to also run those high core count productivity applications really well too. That makes this, you don't have to like pick between 3D Vcache gaming PC or a high core count productivity CPU like you did last generation. This chip does everything, and it does everything insanely well. Incredible gaming performance from the 3D Vcache and powerful productivity performance from the 16-core layout. We, ROG, have a number of great motherboards that you can pair with this. Today, I'm using the ROG Crosshair X670E Hero with this bad boy, which is just like our super feature-rich motherboard for high-level enthusiasts. It's got all the features that you could want for this. We also have some ROG Strix X670E options, as well as a tough gaming X670E option as well, if you're looking for more of a just the essentials kind of route. One thing, or a few things to keep in mind. So you've got the chip in hand, okay? You go to Newegg. Can't go to Newegg, I guess, but you can go to newegg.com and buy the CPU. It comes to your house. What do you do next? Well, you've got the motherboard. If you do this tomorrow and you get a motherboard that's been on the shelf and it doesn't have the latest BIOS, you're going to want to go to our site and download the latest BIOS for your motherboard first. That's really important in order to get this chip working. So here's the BIOS. It's available on the site. If you don't, if all you have is this CPU, right, and you can't boot the PC to get into the BIOS to update it, you can use our handy dandy BIOS flashback tool. Jake, have you actually used this before?
So many times, honestly. Like, I'm not even kidding.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've actually never used it. This is really weird because usually when I have to update the BIOS, I have a working chip in the machine, and I can just plug in the USB drive and do it through the BIOS menu. The thing was, and actually I did in this one too. I had a 78 or 7900X in there, but I swapped the CPU before I thought to update the BIOS.
That's exactly what happens to me.
And so I was like, okay, I could swap the CPU back and update the BIOS, which is going to be really annoying. But then I remembered BIOS flashback. There's a little button on a number of our motherboards that you can put the BIOS on a flash drive, plug it in.
There's a specific USB drive for the BIOS flashback.
Yep. With the computer off, you just press the BIOS flashback button, and it will flash the BIOS for you, even if there's no CPU or RAM in the machine.
That's awesome.
That is so cool and really useful when you've got a new CPU like this, and the BIOS hasn't been updated for it yet. So download the latest BIOS, flash it with BIOS flashback. The other thing that you will want to do, oops, that's not the right tab, is go to the driver and tools tab on our site and make sure you also download the latest chipset drivers. If you're building a new PC, this is probably something you would do anyway, but make sure that you do that. If you already have a PC and you're swapping in a new CPU like I did, you're still going to want to download the latest chipset drivers because that has the drivers necessary to determine which tasks go to which of these two CCDs, right? That's really important if you want to get the best performance out of your gaming and your productivity tasks. So make sure that you download the latest BIOS, make sure you download the latest chipset drivers, and you should be good to go. Now, let's actually head over to the BIOS. Sorry, I'm checking chat here. Yeah, a lot of people. Man is holding one of the most satisfying boxes in the world. It is. And I know it looks like there's a CPU in there, and it's not actually the X3D because the X3D is in the machine. That's actually my old CPU. That was some camera magic there. Yes. Oh, yes. Good point. Neuro Poga says, apart from the up-to-date BIOS, you also want to make sure that you have Xbox Game Bar installed and up to date because that's actually what AMD and Microsoft are using to determine whether a game is running and whether it should be running on that CCX with the 3D V-cache. So make sure that you have Game Bar installed and updated too. Most people should, but sometimes on a new PC, you have to actually open the Xbox app and let it reinstall itself. So yes, make sure you do that as well. Thank you for that note. Milky Ice redeemed a Wookiee growl, Jake.
I wasn't ready for some reason. I've been drinking coffee and I don't actually have water, so my throat is already really dry. So Wookiee growling, maybe that's better for Wookiee growling. I don't know.
It never gets old. It never gets old. All right. So, something that you guys should know about this particular chip. You cannot overclock it in the traditional sense. And when I say traditional, I mean like last 10 years traditional, not really traditional. Traditionally, you have a multiplier for the CPU that you can go in and just kind of bump it up and play with the timings and stuff. You can't do that with this. It's not quite that easy with these CPUs. That is kind of locked down. However, you do have some tweaking options to kind of get the most out of this. So the first thing that I would do is make sure that you have the AI overclock tuner and turn on Expo to make sure that you're getting the max frequency and latency out of your RAM. So definitely do that. And then if you want to play with some other stuff, Precision Boost Overdrive is still available on the X3D chips, okay? So you can come here and set this to enabled, and you'll get just a little bit more performance out of the chip because it'll boost a little bit higher, a little bit longer. You can do manual tuning if you want, although I think from what I've seen, these limits are pretty close to their height. You can also play with the curve optimizer. So this is a little bit more advanced. But if you remember our stream a couple months ago, this basically lets you undervolt individual cores, which will let those cores boost higher depending on what's stable for that core. So this core might be able to undervolt a little bit further than this core or this core, which means that the further you can undervolt each individual core, the more it's going to boost. So that can give you some extra performance too. I've seen some decent results from that from other people on the web. Let me double check here. You can also play with the Fmax boost override as well, which gives you a little bit more room to play with there. One other thing I want to call out here, Precision Boost Overdrive, if you set this to enhancement, this is a feature that we, ROG, added to our motherboards. If you remember with the original 7000 series processors, they were designed to go up to 95 degrees Celsius in temperatures because AMD really wanted to maximize the performance of these chips. And sorry, did I say 75? I meant 95. 95 degrees Celsius. Okay, I don't remember what I said. 95 degrees Celsius. It's perfectly safe at those temperatures, but some people just get a little hung up on temperatures and they want things a little bit lower because that's just what they're more comfortable with. So we added this feature. You can now set PBO enhancement to level 1, 2, or 3, depending on the temperature limit that you want for your CPU. And in fact, we found that on like the 7900X or 7950X, that if you set it to 80 degrees, sometimes you could even get a little more performance and lower temperatures at the same time. Super cool. On this chip, the 7950X3D is actually doesn't go as high thermally. It's actually limited to more like 85 degrees is what AMD is aiming for on this chip. So I didn't see like any huge performance boosts by setting the thermal limit here. But if 85 is even too high for you, I would strongly urge you to leave it where it is because you're going to get the most performance that way, and 85 is not that high. But if you wanted even lower, you could set this to 70 degrees. You would lose a bit of performance, but your CPU would run cooler, your fans would run quieter. If that's a thing you want to do, that is a thing that you can do with the ROG BIOS. Finally,
I had no idea we had that feature. That's really cool.
So yeah, that feature is actually new. And actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to drop a link in the chat here. PBO enhancement. So that this feature, we added it like right after you and I finished our stream last time.
Oh, really?
Ace just added this to the BIOS. And I was like, oh man, that would have been so cool to talk about on stream. So I'm popping a link into Twitch chat. If you could pop it into YouTube chat for me, that'd be great. And that link explains how to use it and some of the results that we saw with some of the other 7000 series chips. It's pretty cool. Definitely recommend checking it out if you're on one of those the non-X3D chips. Finally, if you are really advanced, you can also play with like the E-clock to push things even further. I'm not going to detail any of that today because that's really kind of more advanced overclocking. But there's some pretty, if you can like really dial it in, it's hard to test for because you have to test it like idle and low loads and high loads, but you can actually overclock this chip if you really know what you're doing. There's just not like a easy multiplier overclocking. One last thing that I want to call out here, where I gotta remember where the setting is. Advanced, nope, extreme tweaker. It's down here in core flex. So like we talked about earlier, right? You have those two different CCDs on the chip, and Microsoft and AMD are working together to ensure that the system chooses the correct CCD for any given task at hand, right? So that if you're running a game that's really going to benefit from that Vcache, it's going to prioritize the CCD that has the Vcache on it. And if you're running a multi-threaded productivity application that wants more frequency and doesn't care as much about cache, that it's going to prioritize that CCD. If you find yourself in an area where you want to manually decide which CCD to use, maybe you're running a program that hasn't been optimized for these CPUs yet, or you're trying to fiddle with things and test things out, you can do that. So there are two places to do that. You can actually, if you go to advanced, I believe it's down here, AMD CBS, and then SMU common. Here it is, SMU common options. You can set the preferred core. You can prefer the frequency core for everything, or prefer the cache for everything. I believe driver should be the same as auto, but I'm not positive. That will just let the driver determine what it wants to do. The other thing you can do that is even more advanced, if you go over here and go into Core Flex, you can actually set a very advanced algorithm for which CCDs are prioritized in which scenarios. So if you click this Load X3D Core Flex Gaming preset, that's like a preset that we added in, and it basically CCD 0 is the Vcache CCD, CCD 1 is the higher clocked CCD. So this gaming profile basically says, if the load the load is between 20 and 50 amps on the CPU, use CCD 0 with the Vcache. That's level 2 here in between 20 and 50. And if it's above that, if it's like a really high core count productivity load, then prioritize the CCD with the higher clocks.
And you can tweak those numbers?
Yeah, you can tweak these numbers manually. So if you're trying to get it, and there's also a memory threshold. So this is really for high memory, memory intensive applications. So memory intensive applications like with less than 8 cores, like a game, will theoretically prioritize CCD 0 in this scenario. But you can adjust these for yourself. Again, useful if you're overclocking, you're trying to stress test certain CCDs, things like that, or if you find that a certain program isn't behaving as it's supposed to. Again, as programs update themselves, as AMD and Microsoft keep working together on fine-tuning this, that shouldn't be a problem. But it's there for you if you want to mess with it. So
I category is extreme tweaker for a reason. That's for the power users for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm gonna go show this. I'm gonna go show the stock performance, but I'm gonna turn on Precision Boost Overdrive just because why not?
Sure.
Like you should always just do that. All right. Should we check out some gaming performance?
Yeah. That's why I'm here.
Asus Absence of Logic says ROG motherboards have the best BIOS in the industry, in my opinion. Every time I try a different brand motherboard, I miss it. Yeah, you should stop trying different brands because we do, in fact, have the best BIOS. I also know this to be true from experience as someone who used to have to review some of this stuff.
I've literally never owned a different brand motherboard in my life.
It's not worth it, Jake. It's not worth it.
I just haven't. Just happenstance, honestly.
My first home server. I just bought literally the cheapest parts that I could find on the shelf at Micro Center, and it was.
Yeah, you're going a little robot when your PC is rebooting. It's
right decision. Just to say.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, we got some quirks here when we reboot this machine.
Yeah. Your whole system gets overloaded. But I think we're over the hill.
All right. Sweet. Sorry about that, guys. Now I just have to make sure I'm using the right mouse because I'm moving to another PC. So, by the way, for this machine, we've got an RX 6700 XT in there. I really should have had them send me a 7900 XTX. I didn't. This is the card we have today, but that's okay because we're testing the CPU. So this card is not going to be doing that much work because we're going to be trying to put the CPU through its paces. Although I did boost this GPU's power target with GPU tweak because, again, why not? Every machine you own, just push the power target of the GPU to max, turn on Precision Boost Overdrive. It's free performance for literally 10 seconds of work. We're going to do a quick Cinebench run just to kind of see what the CPU can do. And then we're going to do Spider-Man today. I'm going to do this just 1 minute.
Can't go wrong with Spider-Man.
You can't go wrong. I felt bad like using the same game that we used like just a couple weeks ago, but actually this ended up being the perfect example. So if you guys remember, a couple weeks ago, we did another episode of Pulse where we were testing Spider-Man for some different stuff, and it is a CPU heavy game, especially if you crank up ray tracing, which is just beautiful in Spider-Man Remastered. If you crank up ray tracing, it pegs the CPU hard. Plus, it's like streaming all these assets as you swing through the city. It's got NPCs and cars running around. That's a lot of work for the CPU to do. And if you guys remember, we were running Spider-Man and getting like sub 60 frames per second. This was on my personal machine in which I have a 5800X. Now the 5800X is actually a great CPU.
Yeah.
It is handling everything I can throw at it with aplomb. But Spider-Man with max ray tracing is probably one of the toughest CPU bound games right now. So if you want to see what a brand new CPU can do, it is a good CPU to run. They should stop putting pegs in CPU. That's not what I meant. All right. Almost 35,000 points in multi-core Cinebench. That is crazy. That's
Huge.
I mean, so we've never not. I mean, we've seen that score before from like this. It's pretty close to the 7950X, the regular 7950X. But that's what's amazing. This is an X3D processor, right? That kind of is the best gaming processor on the market. But again, it's also still a productivity machine. So that is a really, really good score. And that's something that like the 5800 X3D, right? If you back at the 5000 series generation, you had to choose between the 5800 X3D for top tier gaming or something like the 5950X that you had for more cores. This, you do not have to choose anymore. I'm using the wrong mouse again. This is
Welcome to my world. You have two keyboards as well, or just two mice?
I have two keyboards and two mice. I should be using a KVM or something, but I'm not. So while this starts up, I want to mention that this is a great game to showcase this with, but we're seeing a lot of improvements across the board with gamings. Hogwarts Legacy has some nice boosts to performance with this. Shadow of the Tomb Raider actually saw like a 20% plus boost from this game compared to the 7950X. Not compared to like a last gen CPU, compared to just the non-X3D counterpart.
That's actually
most
ridiculous.
games you're probably going to see like a 10 to 15% boost is kind of what we're seeing on average. Cyberpunk, Far Cry 6, Total War, Warhammer 3, all of those are seeing really nice performance increases in this game. But again, when we're talking about that 10 to 15% figure, that's just over the regular 7950X. If you're upgrading from like me, a 5800X, or even earlier, like a 2600X or a 3600X, you're going to be blown away by the increase in performance you can get from the CPU, as long as you're CPU limited, which in games like this, you are. So
I'm just going to throw this in. We're not doing a full gaming news segment today, but I do just have to say that I'm really hyped for the new Elden Ring expansion they announced.
Yeah, me too.
It's going to be good.
I'm going to play it.
Going to be a big hype.
All right. So we've got the Amazing Bagman here.
Is that actually what they call him?
Yes. This is. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but
I'm sure I've seen it.
In Amazing Spider-Man #1, the first issue of Spider-Man, he tries to join the Fantastic Four. He like breaks into the Baxter Building, and oh no, sorry, this wasn't from Amazing Spider-Man #1. This was from when Venom was first introduced. So when he has the alien symbiote. And I think he like gets it off him or something with the help of the Fantastic Four, and he doesn't have a costume to swing home in, and so they gave him a Fantastic Four costume, a spare one, but they don't have masks, so then he had to wear a paper bag on his head.
That's awesome.
So yes, that is a real Spider-Man costume. So guys, check out this performance. All right, you remember when we were running this on my 5800X machine, we were getting sub 60 frames per second. Okay, it was a little choppy with ray tracing maxed out. Granted, like you can get more from this game with that CPU for sure, but with ray tracing maxed out, it's hard. We're getting 90 plus frames per second depending on where you are in the city. That's insane. That's like a 50% boost over my 5800X. And with a GPU, like I'm running out of last gen GPU. Remember, this is a 6700 XT.
Yeah.
Okay. So the GPU has nothing to do with anything here. If you guys remember last time, we were running it at 1440p, but the resolution doesn't matter. I'm running it at 1080p today. Doesn't matter because sub 60 was all we were going to get, even if we had changed it to 1080p. We talked about this in the last stream. Your GPU the resolution doesn't matter when your CPU is the main bottleneck. And so the fact that we're like pushing 100 frames per second here is insane because this game is so tough on the CPU. So tough. And particularly when you turn on ray tracing. So we can turn off ray tracing and give people a taste of just like what the frame rate looks like there. But 90 to 100 frames per second, when I was just playing this last week on a 5800X with sub 60 is just bonkers. What am I doing right now? Turning off ray tracing.
Yeah, right there. I love how fluid the menu is too. Yeah, so immediately like we're looking at 130. It said 170 for a moment, 147.
Yep, 150 frames per second, easy with this CPU. Again, like now we're no longer CPU limited. You can see that the GPU usage is at 98% there. Well, now it just dropped down to 0. I don't know why. 98%. So that means that we're no longer CPU limited. So we could actually, this chip is probably capable of slightly higher frames per second than this, depending if you had a stronger GPU in the system. So because I only have a 7600 XT, like it's maxed out right now. But if you had like a 7900 XTX or something like that, you could push that even further. So it's not that the CPU can't push higher frame rates than that, but when you put on ray tracing, it's tough. It's tough in this game. But I will take 90 frames per second with ray tracing maxed out any day of the week because it is just beautiful in this game.
Yeah, that's
we showed
incredible.
this off last time. I won't go too deep, but I really want to find a building with some windows on it.
Yeah, the reflections.
Ha! Yeah, those reflections are just so high quality.
You can see the sidewalk. You can see the people moving around, all the details and the
my
leaves.
Awesome mask.
That is actually. I don't have that costume, I don't think. I haven't played in a while, though.
Jericho says the CPU is only at like 2 to 3%. So when you are CPU limited, you can't always look to CPU usage. First of all, that may be a monitoring thing. Right now, it says GPU usage is 99%. It wasn't saying that to me earlier. So theoretically, we could actually be getting higher frames per second with this, thanks to the 7950X if we had a higher end GPU.
I wouldn't trust those percentages, though, personally.
Yeah, so that sometimes percentages can be a little bit weird. But again, when you are trying to find out, and Jake, you and I've talked about this before, if you're trying to find out if your CPU bottlenecked or not, I wouldn't watch the CPU percentage because some games, they're not going to use the CPU to 100% if they're only designed to use a certain number of cores or if there are other things that going on in the system that the CPU is also using. What you really want to check is that GPU usage. So if the GPU is at 100% or near it, then you're GPU bound. If the GPU is at like less than that, if the GPU is only at 70% or 60%, you know that the GPU is not being utilized to its fullest potential and the CPU is the bottleneck in that scenario. I wouldn't look at the CPU usage percentage to figure that out. But yeah, so actually that's weird. I was looking at this earlier and the GPU wasn't pegged quite this hard when I was ray tracing. It might be, it's possible that I turned the settings up a little bit and that pushed the GPU a little bit harder. But again, so I mean, if we want to, let's turn up this object range a little bit, and you'll see that we probably become CPU limited here.
Oh, I'm sure.
Not quite.
Well, it dropped about 15 to 20 frames.
Yeah. Anyway, you get the idea. That's because I'm paused. I was like, why is it so high? It's because I'm paused. So yeah, you get the idea. It's this processor can really push things hard when the CPU is the bottleneck in your system. And if it's not, or it could prevent the CPU from being the bottleneck in your system, like what we're seeing here, right? So on my system, my CPU wouldn't have been able to keep up with this GPU quite as well, most likely. And we would have seen lower frame rates. We did see lower frame rates, again, the resolution doesn't matter. So this thing is an absolute monster. And then you can go straight from gaming down to doing video editing or doing Blender or whatever it is that you want to put
design,
onto your
you
CPU.
name it. Yeah.
Streaming. I mean, this is something that you deal with all the time, right? Like, because you have a lot of CPU stuff happening in the background when you're streaming. And in fact, you know what? I wonder if that's maybe part of this too. So when you have a lot of CPU stuff going on in the background, those extra cores come in really handy when you have animations on your stream and things like that. So this really is the ultimate do anything CPU from AMD if you want ultimate gaming performance and really high productivity performance as well. And I want to call out a few other things here too. So, in terms of the other benefits of going AMD for something like this is that you have this long socket longevity, right? So AMD has already committed to supporting the AM5 socket through at least 2025, which means that in 2025, if you want to upgrade your CPU again, or after 2025, right? If your games start pegging your CPU more and you need to upgrade, you can upgrade to whatever AMD's 2025 CPU is without swapping out the motherboard and the RAM and all of this other stuff. You just drop in the CPU, update your BIOS with BIOS flashback, and you're good to go. That's not something that is always a given with other CPUs. So that's really nice for this. And you get full support for future technologies on X670E too. I think X670E is a really great platform for kind of setting yourself up for the future of gaming. You've got DDR5 with the new Expo feature. You've got PCIe 5.0. You've got Wi-Fi 6E and 2.5 gig LAN on this board. AI cooling too. Like, you are really, really set for whatever AMD, Intel, NVIDIA, and ROG are going to throw at you in the next few years. You're really, really setting yourself up for success in the future. So I think that this CPU is a great buy if you have really high performance needs. And I'm really excited to see what their other X3D chips are going to do too. This has been like the thing that we've been waiting for ever since 7000 series was announced. It was like, okay, that's great. Where's the X3D? I got to see how it performs. And here we are.
Yeah, this seems like a great chip for content creators for sure. Everybody knew this was going to come. It's finally here. And yeah, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I'm hyped. I'm excited to see what the other chips can do as well for people who don't have as many high core count needs. But this is really, we're on the brink of like a whole. I mean, we have new generations all the time, right? But this new
these leaps
architecture
feel significant every time.
This is a very significant leap that we're in right now, with GPUs and CPUs taking these big jumps in not just performance, but in the architecture, right? This is a whole new way to dedicate these tasks to the CPU, and I think it's going to be a really, really exciting time to be a PC builder.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I've had over the years, I was basically locked into dual PC streaming for a long time, and we're now finally getting these CPUs that don't feel like you need that double PC streaming. I'm curious if that's going to change with AV1 encoding and, you know, potentially higher bit rates in the future. I don't know if we're moving up to 120 FPS and 1440p streaming, but as it stands, this chip looks like, you know, maybe the best possible CPU you could get for streaming.
Yeah, I mean, technology marches ever onward, right? Like, everything is always, you know, nothing lasts forever, but I do think that this is going to be I don't like to say the future-proof word, the F word. I don't like to say the F word on stream because I feel like it's kind of lost some of its meaning. And nothing is truly future-proof, right? If you're constantly using the latest and greatest stuff, eventually you're going to need to upgrade. But I do think that something like the AM5 platform X670E is setting yourself up for as much longevity as you can get out of these new technologies. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, no, it's exciting stuff for sure. Yeah, well, this was a great little demo. I learned something about Spider-Man. Look at that bag.
You learned about the amazing bag man.
I feel like
learned about 3D V-Cache. You can go home and tell your spouse all these exciting things you learned today.
Now I gotta find the amazing Bagman Marvel Snap card and spend like $10 on it.
Yep. There you go. If it's not out yet, it will be.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
We are
a lot of fun stuff to play with.
Yeah. No, I think that's just about it. That was quick and to the point.
Nice and tight. Yep. Well, no giveaway today, guys.
Correct.
I hope I put that on thing. Yeah. Okay. No giveaway today, guys. But come back to today's Tuesday. Thursday and Friday. Jake will be streaming. You streaming with the Scar 18?
We will have a Scar 18 stream and then a 4090 stream this week. So it'll be a few different devices shown off, but it'll be I'm not sure what our second game is going to be. We're definitely going back into Returnal. I'm having a lot of fun with that game.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, so follow us, guys, if you haven't followed us already. We'll be playing with more hardware as the weeks go on. I'm probably going to be sending this PC back to Eric. We'll be coming out with some articles for it, maybe some guides and stuff. But yeah, get excited. A new age of CPUs is upon us.
Yeah, and for those asking, there will be no stream tomorrow. No, Lucky is still out sick. So, but hopefully she's feeling better soon. But guys, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you guys very soon. GG's. Take care.